Hey, what's up? This is Jake, and today I want to dive into the current situation with Bitcoin. All right, so let's get into it. So, what's going on with Bitcoin this week? I suggest you watch the entire video to get all the information I've prepared for you. Let's start by looking at the Bitcoin chart. Notice how clearly it shows a downward break. Even though it bounced back to recover its range, it got rejected. This tells us that for now, the dominant force in Bitcoin is still bearish. This confirms what I mentioned in the previous video. Now the key issue isn't whether Bitcoin will bounce at $39,000 or before. The important thing is making the decision to protect your capital before a bigger drop happens. It's not about where Bitcoin rebounds, but about the chart structure. You should make your moves when Bitcoin hits the bottom, and the same goes for altcoins. Currently, Bitcoin's weekly close was absolutely bearish. As I mentioned in the last video, I think Bitcoin could see further corrections. The larger Bitcoin's range, the stronger its eventual break. When Bitcoin forms a range and holds it for many days, weeks, or months, the breakout tends to be very strong. For instance, look at 2018. A 175-day range led to a 50% drop to $3,000. In 2019, a 133-day range broke upward, resulting in a 230% rise to $9,800. Then, in 2020, a 175-day range broke upward by 445%. By May 2021, a 105-day range broke downward, dropping 52% to $30,000. In 2022, a 112-day range broke downward and fell 65%. The 2023 range was 230 days, and when it broke, it surged approximately 160%. The point is, when the range is over 100 days, a break upward can be very bullish, with increases between 200% to 400%. Conversely, a downward break can lead to drops of around 50%. Bitcoin has already corrected 25% from its new high this year. If it corrects 40%, it might fall to $44,000. A 47% correction could drop it to $39,000. If it corrects like it did in 2018 with a 51% drop, it could go to $36,000. And if 66% correction occurs, similar to 2022, seems extreme but could take it down to $24,000. This broken range could indeed result in a significant bearish move. Honestly, I recommend not getting swept up by fanatical thinking without analysis or strategy. Bitcoin will go up again, but that will be evident when the chart shows a bottom formation. That's when you should go long. Right now, we're facing a strong correction, but the bull run is still intact for the medium to long term. Alright, now let's talk about the short-term chart and some important points. This range that started in May has been active for several days and has already broken down. Bitcoin is still in a bearish channel that began forming at $72,000 and has continued to develop. We're currently within the range I'm pointing out. I see some people in the community claiming this is a higher low, but we've seen higher lows before that eventually broke down. What's needed is a higher high as well. The last high was around $58,000. Here, Bitcoin has had what's known as a dead cat bounce, a term from Wall Street that means even a falling cat can bounce when hitting the ground. It's a bounce that's not indicative of a bullish trend, but rather a continuation of the fall. Currently, Bitcoin has hit this dead cat bounce because it didn't break the previous high of about $58,000 and has held steady for a bit. Bitcoin has started again a relief bounce, often called a dead cat bounce. It has formed a lower low and drops back into its previous range like it did recently. That's a strong bearish signal. Most likely, this is just a dead cat bounce with a lower high, but we'll know for sure by Wednesday or Thursday. So what can we expect from this range? Statistics indicate that when a range forms after a downward move, it's likely to continue downward. Given that the previous move from $64,000 to $53,000 was bearish, this range has a higher probability of continuing downward. Where could it go? Possible levels are $50,000, $43,000, and around $38,800. When will the fall stop? When we see a bottom formation, that's when Bitcoin will be ready to rise again, and we haven't seen that yet. I find it amusing when people on social media say that Bitcoin won't fall below $48,000 or $45,000. Let me tell you something. If someone says Bitcoin won't fall from $45,000, $50,000, or $49,000, they're either lying or they don't know what they're talking about. Why? Because only when a bottom formation is visible, we can say the corrective move has ended. And the idea that miners won't let it fall is just as flawed. The same arguments were made in 2022 when Bitcoin was about to drop from $39,000 to $15,000. People said miners and institutions wouldn't allow it, that it was different this time, and that states and billionaires wouldn't let it drop. Yet, in April 2022, Bitcoin fell from $39,000 to $15,000. Those same excuses lead people to believe it won't fall further, but then it does, trapping them even more. So, what would it take for Bitcoin to form a bottom in the current range? It would need to break above $58,000 and this bearish channel. If Bitcoin manages to break above this channel and reach around $64,000, we could then say a bottom is formed. That would invalidate the entire previous weekly candle structure. It's possible. But until that happens, the most likely scenario is that this range will continue to develop. And ranges following bearish moves usually end in further bearish moves. Alright, let's now take a look at the USDT chart. This is the dominance chart for USDT, and it's showing 100% negativity for altcoins. Notice how incredibly bullish it is. If this chart is bullish, Bitcoin is bearish. Although we see that very recently the dominance tried to touch 5.29%, but it rose again. Until this chart peaks, Bitcoin won't bottom out. I believe the bull run isn't over yet, but we can't rely on the usual cycle narratives. This halving cycle has been completely different. We've seen all-time highs before the halving, which has never happened before. So, we need to follow what the chart tells us. We're already seeing a correction. For example, in 2021, people underestimated the correction, thinking Bitcoin would quickly recover, but it fell by 55%. Now, an important thing to note is that this Thursday the CPI report is coming out, and it will have a significant impact. On Tuesday, there will be some volatility because Powell speaks. On Wednesday, there will be volatility not just in Bitcoin, but also in the stock market due to Powell's speech. I consider the inflation report even more important. The expected inflation rate is around 3.1%. If the report shows 3%, it would be very bullish for both the stock market and Bitcoin. We could see a strong rebound attempt, which could potentially establish a bottom for Bitcoin if the rate is 3% or less. However, if the report shows 3.2% or higher, it could be bearish for the stock market, so stock traders should be cautious this week. How will the inflation report turn out? No one knows, because during an election year, data can be manipulated to appear more favorable. Things can be murkier than usual. If we look at the oil prices, which have been rising since June, there could be a negative impact in Bitcoin. But let's see what happens. Just stay alert for the inflation report on Thursday. Additionally, the total 2 chart for altcoins is breaking downward. For altcoins to have a chance at recovery, the total 2 chart needs to get back above 960. Now let's look at another very important thing. Many people say, why, if the stock market goes up, does Bitcoin fall? Well, let's see the following. This one in the past, Bitcoin fell, but the stock market rose. What eventually did was that Bitcoin recovered. But after the fall, the one who ate the entire fall needed all the recovery to recover its capital from before the fall. Therefore, I think it is possible that when the correction ends, there could be some interesting rebound movement. But when the correction ends, in the meantime, be careful. That's all for today's video. Thanks for watching. Please share your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.